All right, good morning, everybody. It's Regan here in Never Stop Healing. And today we've got some very interesting things to cover. But before we jump in, last night's hack, for those of you who are in our Health Accelerator community, we covered something really interesting because we talked about timeless health. And today's theme will be very directed towards timeless health. But we started a new series where we've got 12 weeks where we're working on activities that are the most enjoyable. We're showing you how to convert fat into muscle. We're also really maximizing some of the anti-aging capabilities in your body. So if you missed last night, make sure you watch the recording. It will be up very soon. But we did share a mindset scorecard with everybody that we're asking everyone to take before next week's Health Accelerator Challenge. So get on that. But without further ado, let's jump into today's show. Today's show is a friend of mine who's an amazing human. This is a man who's written several books. He's ran multiple businesses. He's a serial entrepreneur, a polymath. He's got interests in advertising, media, consumer products, human performance, and longevity, geopolitics, and real estate development. He's kind of a Renaissance man. If I've ever met one before, this fits Mark Young to the T. I was recently on his podcast, Blunt Force Truth, and I think many of you watched that and saw that as we sent that out. And I really had a great time on that show. But what Mark has done is he's leveraged his education and passion for neuroscience, persuasion, neurolinguistic programming, and hypnosis to build Jekyll and Hyde Labs into one of the nation's most successful advertising agencies for challenger and emerging brand consumer products. He's recently written a book called Hypnotizing, and that was part of your doctoral thesis. So Mark's a PhD, and so I just want to welcome you, Dr. Mark Young, to Never Stop Healing. It's so good to have you here.
It is a pleasure and an honor to be here, Regan, and I am just thrilled to spend this time with you.
Yeah, we're going to have a blast. And so one of the things that's interesting about you is that when you're not driving 8 triple-digit speeds on the auto racing course, flying planes, or road tripping on your motorcycle, you live and travel between Michigan and Florida with your wife, Sally. And so you're a bit of an adrenaline junkie yourself.
So Regan, you'll appreciate this. So if you're familiar with the Comet gene.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Which is RS4680 for anybody who wants to look it up on their 23andMe, RS4680 on your 22nd chromosome.
Yes.
And if you look at that, I am a Val equivalent, which means I am a hardwired warrior.
Yeah.
So the beauty of being that is I'm the type of person that stays dead calm in the middle of a crisis. But the counterpart of that is we actually have lower dopamine uptake. So for us to actually have fun takes a really big hit of dopamine.
Yes. Well, that's great. I've got the same variant, and that's why you'll catch me on downhill mountain biking. I've got a dirt bike that I ride all over. I live in the mountains, so I can ride right from my house and be in miles of trails. So I used to race dirt bikes. So you and I are cut from the same cloth.
And I'll tell you something, so I do road racing. So road racing is like Formula One tracks, 3-mile tracks, 15, 20 turns. And the average heart rate of a auto racer during a race is about 148.
Wow.
And I wear a whoop all the time.
Yep.
My average heart rate when I'm on the racetrack is in the 90s.
What? That is crazy.
Because I'm just happy.
You're relaxed. Yeah. Wow.
It's like Zen for me. I'm not panicked. I'm literally in a flow state Zen mood when I'm on the track, and this is my happy place, and this is amazing, and I'm just so pleased to be here. And my heart rate is very calm.
Man. Yeah.
Yours is similar.
I'll have to track it and see what I would agree. But sometimes, when you're on a dirt bike and you're climbing and there's a little more, cardiovascular.
Yeah, I get spikes. So I'll have these quick spikes to 120, 130, 140.
When you're cornering, probably.
Yeah. So when there's a lot of G-forces or something, you'll see this super fast spike and then boom, comes right back down to something calm.
That's exciting. So you study the brain, more than almost anyone, and you've got just an interesting way of looking at it. But if you were to just kind of compartmentalize the brain and give us kind of an overview about how our brains work, I think it would be really helpful because that's one of the organs that is responsible for the majority of our perceptions and our life experience is our brain. But how would you describe the brain, and how do you study it?
So the way I try to explain people how the mind works is because I come at things as a hypnotherapist. So I get people to think about their brain as a conscious and an unconscious mind. And you often hear people use the word subconscious, and that's actually incorrect. It's really conscious and unconscious
Mm.
because it's the part of the brain that you're not recognizing is going on. It really is unconscious. So I want people to think about their conscious mind, if you will, for a visual for a minute. Think about it as a grape. Now think of this grape sitting on top of a thin dime. Now think of the grape and the dime sitting on a beach ball. The grape represents your conscious mind, which is capable of taking in 7 bits of information per second, plus or minus 2. This has been proven by research, and this is the reason phone numbers were made for 7 digits.
Yeah.
And in France, they tried to go to 8 digits once, and they almost had a revolution that people were literally so upset they tried to add an 8th digit, and they went back to 7. Now, that dime represents what we would call critical faculty, and the beach ball represents your unconscious mind. So when your conscious mind can process 7 bits minus 2, plus or minus 2, your unconscious mind can process 10,000 bits of information. And that's where all the action is. And that's where it's also where all the problems lie. So let's say you came to me, Regan, and you said, I have a fear of flying. Well, in talk therapy, which I can do, I could spend the next 3 years with you demonstrating to you how safe airplanes are. We could talk about statistics. I could show you how cantilever wings move. I could explain camber on a wing. I could do all of this, and you would be completely capable of understanding the logic of everything I'm telling you and still be afraid of getting on an airplane.
Yeah.
Because your fear of the plane is in your unconscious mind, not your conscious mind.
Mm.
So the way hypnotherapy operates is for certain types of conditions, talk therapy is wonderful. For conditions that were created in an instant, like PTSD,
Yum.
or for conditions that were created by trauma, or conditions that are irrational, the fear of flying, the fear of ladders, whatever the case is, we find that instead of trying to rationalize a person over the fear, we want you to think of the fear think of it as a app on your phone. So if you had an app on your phone and it was acting kind of squirrely, would you go and open it up and read all 5,000 lines of code and look for the letter that's off, or would you just delete the app and reload the app?
Yeah, delete, reload. Yes.
Correct. Because why? So talk therapy is opening up the app and looking at 5,000 lines of code and trying to find the letter that's off. Hypnotherapy is let's delete the bad data and let's load in the correct data.
Got it. Okay. So the subconscious mind, I mean, that's one of those areas that's just a mystery. In so much of the behaviors that we manifest come from this subconscious world. And so, when you access it, and you've taken me through one of your exercises, which I thought was phenomenal, because a lot of people who listen to this show, they've dealt with chronic pain or they may be in pain right now, but you've got a gift of accessing that subconscious mind and helping a person kind of come out of that state. But maybe you could give us a little example about kind of what that looks like, and even maybe we can talk about pain a little bit. And I'm really curious to hear your thoughts on left brain versus right brain, and does it hold up as far as having a differentiation?
So the first thing I'll say is when we're dealing with issues for people, and let me put a couple of things in position. First off, you do a great job on your show of talking to people about mindset and having them take, like the mindset scorecard.
Yeah.
People need to understand that longevity and health starts with the brain. And you will, as Dan Sullivan says, you'll go find what you're looking for. The eye only sees and the ear only hears what the mind goes looking for.
Yeah.
When you have yourself in the correct mindset, your brain has the ability to make physiological changes in your body. And I'm going to give you an example of this. We are now using hypnotherapy to treat allergies.
Wow.
And it is working. And I'll tell you very quickly what it is. We treat an allergy as an irrational phobia of the immune system. Because if you think about it, it kind of is that, isn't it?
Yeah, it's like, is the pollen really threatening your life? No, but your immune system's behaving as if it is. Yeah.
Exactly. Is tree nut protein really an enemy to my immune system?
Right. Yeah.
But my immune system has irrationally decided it's an invader, right?
Yeah.
If we treat the mind, if we treat the brain of that allergy sufferer as if the immune system was part of the brain, we have successfully been able to get people over the allergies. And even with a kid, I've even seen a case where a child who had severe peanut allergies was treated, medical doctor standing by. This was a kid who couldn't have peanuts in the room.
Wow.
So then they had peanuts in the room, kid was okay. Then they put peanuts on the table in front of the kid as he played a video game and he was okay. Then they let him play with the peanuts with his fingers and he was okay. Then they let him eat a peanut and he was okay. And that was by doing nothing but hypnotherapy.
And it continued, like he
Yes, it didn't revert.
Wow, that's impressive. So Candace Pert's book, Psychoneuroimmunology, yeah, she wrote it like 25 years ago. Molecules of Emotion is what it's called. But yeah, it's that whole concept of, our immune system has an intelligence in it that's connected to our subconscious mind. And so when you do hypnotherapy on somebody who has the allergies, you're essentially going there and just like you use that app analogy, you're deleting the app and then replacing the app. You're downloading it again. Or maybe I've got the wrong concept.
No, you're down the right road. What we do in the case of an allergy, it's pretty simple actually. We put the person into trance. Now we have to remember a lot of people say, "Oh, my brain's too smart. I can't be put into trance." First off, everyone goes into trance. You're in a trance right now talking to me, because this is where you're focused. You're in a trance when you go to the movies. You're in a trance when you ride your dirt bike, when you're on your bike in the mountain.
Yeah.
So we actually live our life going from trance to trance to trance. What a hypnotherapist does is a hypnotherapist can induce the trance. So think about you being in somewhat of a state of REM sleep.
Yep.
Now my voice is going to be your dream. I'm going to control the dream that is happening in this REM state. So in the case of an allergy, what we would do is I would actually put you into what we call an Esdale state, which means you're in deep trance. I would then tell you to visualize an exact replica of Regan sitting in this exact chair. But Regan, as you look at yourself, there is a giant glass wall between you and the other Regan. And that glass wall runs all the way to the floor and it runs as high as you can see. So no matter what happens, you have no physical contact or ability to come in communication with your other self. Now what I would do is I would have you start to do the things that you're allergic to. So I'd say, in Regan, as you're watching your other self, you notice that your other self, as all of a sudden there is a cat approaching you, and the cat jumps up on your lap, and you're petting the cat, and you're having a very good time petting the cat, and you notice that you feel fine, and you're not having any reaction to the cat, and you're not having any allergic reaction to the cat, and the cat dander means nothing to you. And we will continue to let you experience something you can't experience. Once we get done with that experience, I will then say to you, now, Regan, in a moment, the giant glass wall that is between you and yourself is going to be lifted. And the wall lifts now. And as you envision the glass wall lift, you are now face to face with yourself. But this is the you that is no longer allergic to cats. This is you that enjoys having a cat on your lap. This is you that can pet a cat and not have any issue, or eating peanuts, or whatever the case is.
Wow.
In a moment, Regan, what I'm going to have you do, I'm going to ask you to, in your mind, enter the body that is across from you. I want your body and the vision of yourself that you see to become one person. And Regan, at this point, enter that body. Now step into that body. And as you step into that body, Regan, all of those resources, all of those attributes, everything that you have just accomplished is now yours. You now possess all of those resources. You now are no longer allergic to this allergen. Whatever the case is, I'm going to walk you through that. Then I'm going to bring you out of state.
Okay.
Then I'm going to expose you to the allergen.
And that's how they did it with that kid. And
Yep.
And he had, he was able to eat peanuts again, which is amazing.
So there's a thing that I like to try to tell people about. You're probably familiar with the work of Dr. Ellen Langer.
Yeah, a little bit.
So Ellen Langer did an experiment years ago, and I actually just did a little mini recreation of it last weekend for myself. And it was called the counterclockwise study.
Yeah.
And she took a bunch of very, very old men from a nursing home. These people were in wheelchairs, walkers, and canes.
Yeah.
And she put them into a hotel. And the hotel was fitted to look like the year 1959. And 1959 TVs playing 1959 TV shows. Every day they got a newspaper from that date in 1959. There were no mirrors anywhere in this facility. There were pictures of these men in 1959 in picture frames around the building. And they were only allowed to talk about the events of the day of that day in 1959. After a week of exposing these men to thinking young, because that's all they were doing was thinking young. These men no longer needed their walkers. They were out of their wheelchairs. They gave up their canes. Their cadence increased, their step, their flexibility, all of these things increased. But even blood markers altered.
Right.
Even things like A1C improved, and SED rates improved, and cholesterol rates improved, because their brain now convinced them they were 25-year-old men.
Yeah.
That's the kind of power that our mind has over our longevity.
Man. Well, and that study was so fascinating. And I think it was done like, what, 20 years ago?
Yes, it was quite a while back.
Yeah. And have you seen it replicated, or is anyone else doing anything like that? It was such a novel experiment that.
So I actually did a little mini version of it this weekend.
Yeah, let's hear it.
My very first car when I was a kid was a 1968 Chevy Camaro. And it was, and as like any kid, I built the motor up, and it didn't have air conditioning, and I was, a lunatic hot rodder in it. So I bought a new 2022 Chevy Camaro, which looks very reminiscent to the 1968 Camaro.
Yeah, it's got the big flare in the back, and
Yep.
yeah,
Very
looks
similar
good.
body style.
Yep.
And I bought the ZL1, and it's insanely fast. But anyways, I took this on a road trip for 3 days by myself. And in that road trip, I listened only to the music that I listened to back when I was a high school kid. So
Cool.
I was listening to Black Sabbath and Led Zeppelin and Ozzy Osbourne and
Nice.
Deep Purple. And I was
Yeah.
listening to the music of my youth, driving a Camaro. And I even made a point of driving it with the windows open.
No AC. Yeah.
Yep. So I drove on the freeway with the windows down.
Is this in Florida or Michigan?
I actually took the car. It was in Michigan, but I took it into West Virginia and Pennsylvania.
Okay.
And even went as far as started using cash to pay for lunch and stuff
Yeah.
because that's what I would have done then.
Mm-hmm.
So I became Mark the 16, 17, 18-year-old. I can tell you honestly that as that progressed, I felt like Mark the 18-year-old.
Wow.
I had that energy. I had zero physical pain, because I'm 65. Yeah, my knee, I get a knee that hurts or something. Nothing.
Yep.
Nothing.
Mm.
I mean, I was 18 years old driving that car because I triggered my unconscious mind to bring back the experiences. And that's how, let me explain how PTSD happens for a minute, and this will make sense.
Yeah.
When people have PTSD, what happens is something in your life triggers a dramatic or traumatic experience. So I'm going to give you an example. Someone in my office was telling me, one of my people in the office, and she was telling me how she hates making left-hand turns. I can't stand making left-hand turns. And I heard her telling this to one of her coworkers, and I walked by and I go, tell me about the time your parents had a car crash when you were 5 years old. And she goes, my mother did crash the car when I was 4 years old. How did you know that? I said, because PTSD issues usually happen before the age of 3 and usually no more than the age of 7. And then even though something happened to me in a war, whatever the case is, it's really linked to something earlier.
Mm.
So I said, tell me about the crash. He said, well, we were in the left-hand lane. My mother was making a left-hand turn. We got hit. We ended up in the ditch, and I broke my collarbone. I said, okay, so let me tell you what your unconscious mind is doing. When you get in the left-hand turn lane and turn your left-hand turn signal on, your unconscious mind says, oh, I recognize this. This is when we get hit and break our collarbone. So your unconscious mind is doing what? Your unconscious mind is always there to protect you. So what does it do? It dumps in adrenaline. So because it's getting you prepared to be hit.
Right. Yeah.
No one hit you. So now you're shaking and your palms are sweaty and your heart rate's elevated because you have this adrenaline that dumped in for no reason and no way to burn it off. And that's what happens in PTSD. Well, the reverse of that can happen also. We have the ability to also make our unconscious mind trigger those good memories and trigger those good feelings. Not just, do I remember driving a Camaro when I'm 18? How did I feel at the age of 18? How did my body feel at the age of 18? What was my energy level like when I was 18?
Yeah.
What could I do when I was 18? We can trigger those feelings. We can trigger those kind of responses in our body.
Yeah. So what was the difference for you before you went on your adventure? I mean, obviously you had to get yourself in the right state, which you're a genius at, but what was it like when you got done driving your Camaro as the 18-year-old version or 17-year-old version of yourself? And has it stayed with you?
I can tell you what I did to pull out of it on the way back home. What I did is I started using some air conditioning. And I started turning on the news because I actually shut the news off for 3 days.
Yeah.
Which is a big thing for me.
That's big for you.
News program.
Yeah.
So no news. And I will tell you that you'll get a kick out of this. I'd said to my wife, well, I can turn the news off for 3 days. I doubt the country will burn down for 3 days. And then I turned the news on and found out the country was burning down because Roe v. Wade had just been overturned. And I'm like, geez, I guess I was wrong about that. At any rate,
Surprise.
yeah. But yeah, I kind of eased back into my current life on the ride back. Did
Wow.
it stick with me? I will tell you this. I went and did that trip, and then Monday was the day that I went and did the SOT treatment that I was telling you about.
Yeah.
So I did the SOT on Monday, and to my physician here's surprise, the SOT had 0 side effects on me.
Wow.
Nothing. Did the SOT on Monday, and Tuesday went to the gym, worked out with my trainer, and broke new records on how much I was lifting.
Is that right? That's amazing.
Yes.
Wow.
So did that experience play into that? I don't know. I would ask you that question. Did that experience play into that, or am I just genetically lucky and SOT doesn't have that kind of effect on me?
Yeah, I'd have to say it's got to be a little of both, right? I mean, I think that's interesting. No,
SOT can beat you up.
yeah, no nausea, no stomach cramps, nothing.
0.
Wow. Yeah, that's impressive.
0 side effects. And folks, just so you know what we're talking about a treatment that is used for cancer and used for certain things. You can use it for certain disease states. You could use it for herpes. You could use it for what's the other thing I'm thinking of?
We use
Lyme's disease,
yep, infections, Epstein-Barr. It's kind of
viral.
yeah, it's those underlying infections that just don't go away. But this is interesting because were you using it for Lyme, or were you using it for an infection, or were you using it for cancer?
I used it for cancer because one of the things that we talked about on our show. I look at longevity as having 3 main pillars. One being fitness, health, nutrition, exercise. The next pillar being early prevention. And as we've discussed, there's 5 diseases that roughly kill 70%. All 70% of deaths come from 5 diseases. Those 5 diseases are all, you have the ability to early detect all 5 of those diseases, which is heart attack, stroke, Alzheimer's, diabetes, and cancer. And then my third pillar is regenerative medicine. So when, peptides, ozone, stem cells. So when I look at early prevention, that's a big thing for me. So I use the OncoCell RGCC early detection cancer test.
Yeah.
And I came up with a small positive. And it was a small positive that the medical community wouldn't even consider to be cancer at this point.
Mm-hmm.
So it was it came up to 4.1 cells per milliliter, which would be stage 0 or less. But for me, Regan, it was like, okay, it's there. And yes, I could take traditional medicine's route and just say, watch it in a year, watch it in 2 years, see what happens. But for me, it's like, no, I know it's there, so I'm going to go get rid of it.
Yeah.
So that's what I use the SOT for, because it's like, okay, it's present. Let's go get rid of this.
Man, well, it's smart too, and you put your body at a younger version of itself. So you're training your body as if you're the 18-year-old. So that was pre whenever this cancer started to show up, however small it may have been. So it's interesting because you probably erased a good portion of it before you ever got the SOT.
I'm guessing I did. So when you do the RGCC, they will also tell you what substances that the cancer can be damaged by. So in this particular case, I knew that the cancer could be damaged by colloidal silver, ascorbic acid, and IP6. So I started using all of those things on a regular basis for probably 2 months, 2 or 3 months going into the SOT.
Okay.
So I was doing what I could to weaken it, even getting in. And of course, eating the right diet, not feeding it, not eating sugar, not consuming the type of things that, that cancer can live on. But again, full disclosure, it was prostate cancer. Most men die with prostate cancer if you live to be old enough, as you know. I mean, what is it? 50 to 80% of the male population has prostate cancer when they die.
Yep.
They don't die with it. They die, or not from it. They die with it.
Yep.
But again, Regan, for me, I fully plan on being here well past 120.
Yeah.
So for the medical community to say, you leave that there and you could be 85 years old and die and you'll die from something else. No, I don't plan on dying at 85. So we probably need to deal with this.
Sooner the better. Yeah. Yeah. That's proactive health. And I love your pillars. And for those of you who don't know, Mark is just he's a biohacker at heart, but your peptide knowledge is very impressive. And so what's your current stack right now? What are you doing with your peptides?
Well, you're the peptide genius, but peptides I'm using, I'm in my second month of using GHKCU.
Yeah.
And I've decided to do that to get my hair thicker. It manages pain. It's pretty good for managing pain. It helps tighten skin up.
Yep.
I actually blend that because taking GHK by itself can be a little uncomfortable sometimes. So I actually blend that in the syringe with BPC 157 and thymosin beta 4.
Right.
So I buy BPC and thymosin as a blend. And then I will draw about 4 milligrams of GHK in with that and inject that. I'm using CJC 1295 with epimorelin.
Nice. Yeah.
I've now added it on your recommendation. I also added tesamorelin.
Right.
And semaglutide.
Yes.
So I've added that in. What else do I use? I will use melanotan too once in a while for fun.
Especially if you're out in the sun a lot, it's amazing.
Yeah, folks, and I will tell you, melanotan 2 actually gives you a tan, but I don't use it because I want to look so tanned. I use it because I'm actually extremely fair-skinned. And I like to ride motorcycles, which means I catch fire like a vampire. If I'm out too long, I'll be a mess. Using melanotan, I don't burn anymore.
Yeah.
I don't get a sunburn. So I think that's, to me, that's the smart thing. And if I believe, Regan, it was really made for people like me with very light skin to help prevent skin cancer.
That's it. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, skin cancer prevention's one of the things. The other thing is for people who have mold toxicity, it resets the melanocorticoid system. So part of your immune system that's, in your phrases, it's got a misinterpretation of reality. But yeah, so it's a great way for our mycotoxic patients and patients who have co-infections. So great for that. And then it even works on the central nervous system for libido. So it
does, and that's what the peptide PT141 is really a derivative of melanotan 2.
That's it, yeah.
So yeah, if you ever want to have a party, go get some PT141. But my advice is dose it extremely small to make sure that you or your loved one doesn't get an upset stomach, and then dose it a second time.
Yeah.
So do a small dose and then kind of ease into it, and then 45 minutes later, take another small dose of it. I also use ModSC.
Yeah, great.
So I find that's also good, and I've now added NAC or NAD.
Great. Yeah, using ModSC and NAD is an awesome combination. We like to use that or 5-amino-1-MQ with NAD. And are you doing the precursors, or are you just doing straight NAD?
I am doing the straight up NAD, and I'm sub-Qing it and probably doing, I'm going to say 25 to 30 milligrams in a single sub-Q.
Right.
And then doing it frequently, because that's not a big injection of it.
Mm-hmm.
But I find that 20, 30 milligrams of NAC is 2 days of feeling really good and energetic.
Yeah.
Does that kind of add up for you? Does that make sense?
Hmm. Yeah, because I mean, if you think of NAD as like the gas pedal for your sirtuin pathway, so it cleans up all the genetic material, and then it helps you produce more ATP as well. So you're going to get better energy production. So you should feel pretty darn good. And then if you've got the ModSC, that's going to express that pathway. It basically just opens up the freeway so you can get NAD right into the mitochondria. So it's a great combination.
And then other stuff that I do, I have an ozone sauna in my house,
Yeah.
but I also do ozone 10 pass.
Yep.
So I use 10 pass fairly regularly. And then kind of fill in between that with the ozone sauna. I find if you do the 10 pass and then do the sauna, the sauna kind of keeps the 10 pass, I think, keeps some of the effects of the 10 pass alive longer.
Yeah.
Those are kind of probably the big hacks. I like doing some photomodulation stuff.
Mm.
There's so much great technology out there right now, and we have to lean into it. One of the things that I'm always trying to get people to understand, Regan, is we think of money as an asset, and we think of our stockbroker as an asset manager. And I'm always trying to get people to understand money is not an asset, money is a resource. And the asset's your health and your relationships. And you should use the resource to care for the assets. But people have this mindset that if my health insurance doesn't cover it, I don't need it. And what I try to get people to understand is I want you to think of your car insurance for a minute. Unless you have a 10-year-old car, let's say you have a 15-year-old car and you have full insurance and you wreck your 15-year-old car and you go take your car to the body shop. The insurance company is going to give you back a 15-year-old car. That's exactly their job. Their job is to put this back where it was.
Yep.
So if you're 60 and you have something broken and you go to the doctor, your health insurance job is to get you back to where you were. But people confuse lack of symptoms with health. Lack of symptoms doesn't mean you're healthy. But in the world of insurance, their job is they are not responsible to get you into peak health. They're responsible to put you back to where you should be on average for your age and where you are in life. So the issue I have is I am 65 years old. I will honestly tell you there's nothing that I can't do right now that I did when I was 30. I have no limitations on me. But my insurance company, when I go to a traditional doctor, to an allopathic doctor, I'm not interested in you telling me what's typical for a 65-year-old, because what's typical for a 65-year-old is a train wreck. I want to know what's typical for a 25-year-old.
Yeah.
So I'll give you an example is testosterone. A regular doctor will tell me, well, your testosterone's 400. Well, that's normal for a 65-year-old. I'm like, yeah, but I want to be 25. So if I was 25, would you tell me 400 is normal? Well, no, that wouldn't be normal. Exactly. That's my point. You would tell me I was hypogonadism if it was 400 and I was 25 years old, right?
Yeah.
So I don't want to be this age. I want to be that age, because when I'm 100, I want to be able to do the top rung on Your Fitness 50 at 100 program.
Yeah. You're probably at the top rung already, aren't you?
Yeah, I can pretty much hit the top level of it now, but that's 15 years out. That's going to be a lot different at 50 years out.
Yeah. Yeah, well, that's the fun piece of that, is you can always, push yourself. But I love what you're doing, because you're using your psychology, you're using your subconscious mind, and you're programming it as if you are a younger version of yourself. But then you're taking action consciously. You're saying, hey, I'm not going to let this cancer just slide by and wait till it gets worse. I'm not going to neglect my health. I'm going to use the technology that's available, and you look great. I mean, you do not look 65.
I appreciate that.
So yeah, it's amazing.
What where I come from on this, Reagan, is we do not have to let our bodies and our minds fall into disrepair. We have to not accept aging. But what we have to accept is that for every year we get older, we can maintain everything, but we have to be willing to work at it a little harder. And we have to be willing to invest a little more. So, yes, at 65, when I was 18 years old, I would probably have lunch every day in a Burger King.
Mm-hmm.
That's, by the way, that is a behavior I did not repeat last weekend.
Good.
Because my mind won't let me do that.
Yeah.
Because, okay, that's not an option for me. That's no longer in my life. That option is not available to me, is the way my brain sees that. So yes, I'm going to have to work a little harder. I'm going to have to push a little harder in cardio. I'm going to have to do peptides. I'm going to have to do stem cells. I'm going to have to do ozone. I'm going to need to do these things if I want to hold on to that youth and that robust physical ability and to have that sharp brain. But as long as we're willing to work a little harder each year, we don't have to give up a lot. I remember my mother telling me that aging was a process of accepting limitations, of each year learning what you had to give up.
Wow.
And for me, it's like, oh, that's horrible. Oh my God, that's terrible. Why are you doing that?
Yeah.
And
That's what we do in society, though. I mean, we retire when we get older. We pull ourselves out of, being useful, and we fail to capture the wisdom of it. That's one of the reasons I studied with a Japanese teacher, is because Japan, they have a different perspective on aging, and they actually believe that the older that you get, the more you can contribute. And for some reason in American society, we're just, hey, we need you out of the workplace so we can bring in someone else, which is an interesting concept in and of itself. And so your mother picked up on a lot of those societal norms.
so I'm going to share one other thing. It's a paper that I wrote. And this paper came out of my mother telling me one day that she felt there was nothing. She said it felt like there was no time between New Year's and Christmas. Not Christmas and New Year and Christmas.
Wow.
And so I started spending some time trying to understand that. And what I discovered, Reagan, is that as humans, we experience time by the square root of our age.
Mm.
So here's kind of where the math goes. For a typical person that lives to be 80 years old, they experience 25% of their entire life. The average person experiences between the age of 0 and 10. And the reason is, and I want you to think for a minute, when you were 5 years old and you were waiting for your 6th birthday, that seemed to take forever.
So long.
And when you were 16 waiting to become 18, that took a long time.
Yep.
And your 20s lasted a really long time. But your 30s started clipping past much faster than your 20s. And 40s start going faster, and 50s go faster, and 60s go faster. And the reason is, it's because of novelty. So think about, you've been to Las Vegas many times probably.
Yep.
Can you right now recall the first time you went to Las Vegas?
Yep.
Now, tell me about the 4th time.
Yeah. Then it all blurs, after the first time.
The reason you can't remember the 4th time, but you can vividly remember the first time, is because the first time was novelty.
Yeah.
It was novel. You look at all these casinos and these lights and these buildings and all these, these crazy, things that are here.
Yeah.
So the first time it's novelty, and your brain is taking in all this new information.
Mm-hmm.
When you go back the 2nd time, 3rd time, 4th time, 5th time, your brain, because our brains are designed to conserve energy and conserve space, our brain says, okay, we don't need to record this because we have this data. So the only data that you may have recorded was, oh, they built a new hotel since last time I was here. So now you remember, oh yeah, the area hotel wasn't here, but oh, that looks nice. And you remember nothing else. You only remember the novelty. Well, that's what happens in our life. When we're 0 to 10, almost everything in our life is novelty. As we get older, we start to repeat behaviors. The reason my mother had no time was because my mother did the exact same thing every day of her life. Her routine was exact. So her brain had no reason to record any information. It had no reason to make memories, which means there was really no elapse of time. Where I'm going with this is simply this. As people listening to this podcast, most of us are focused on longevity, but there's two forms of longevity. One is the physical longevity, and the other one is the experiential longevity. If you want to experience a long life, you will only do that through constant novelty. So what are you learning? What are you discovering new? What new challenges are you taking on? What new places are you going to? What new things are you experiencing? What new people are you meeting? What new, when I say meeting people, go meet people who are not in your circle. Go find people who you would never associate with. Go talk to homeless people. They have something to teach you. Everyone can teach us something. How do we go get that? I'll give you an example. I love to, I think it's fascinating to talk to somebody that's homeless. One, I'd like to learn about them and how can I help them. The second thing is they can teach me about an experience that I've never had.
Right.
And that's novelty in my brain.
Yeah.
It's also the reason for me, Regan, every 1 to 2 years, I decide to take on a new discipline. So whether it's peptides, whether it is whatever it is, I make these decisions like, okay, next April, I'm going to become an 80% expert in this category.
It's great.
And by the way, my approach to being an expert is I really use Pareto's law. I really work on the 80-20 principle.
Yep.
And that is, you can learn conversational Spanish in 10 months, but it takes 10 years to master it.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, peptides, I'm never going to know what you know. I want to get myself up to being 80% proficient, and I can rely on you for the other 20%.
And that's a great way of learning any new skill. I mean, this is one thing we started doing a couple of years ago is we call them our HACs, our Health Accelerator Challenge. So every week we give members of our community different challenges, new things to work on every week to help, keep their brains engaged in their healing process. So you just explained it in a great way. And you've got a paper that what's the paper titled? And is it?
How we experience time, I believe. I'll tell you where you can find the paper. You can find the paper on the website wisdomtolive.com.
Okay.
You can probably find it at jekyllhydelabs.com. It's also, that's actually covered in my new book, Hypnotizing. That actual information is there. But what it really amounts to is we experience time by the square root of our age. So we experience the 20s slower than the 30s. The 30s are slower than the 40s. The 40s are slower than the 50s. Novelty extends the time.
Well, I love traveling. And so one of the things I noticed is, pre-COVID, we were doing international travel about 3 or 4 times a year. And those years actually slowed down. They felt like they were like 2017, 2018, 2019. Those were slow years for me, but very productive. And it was, I think it goes back to my brain was registering a lot of novelty and a lot of new information, and it's a challenge navigating new areas. So that is a fascinating concept. So the title of the paper is how we
experience time.
How we experience time. Yeah, that's great.
And by the way, I have many friends that are doctors, and I think all doctors are terrific people and they're all well-intended. But many doctors come to medicine and they graduate from med school And then other than doing some CMEs that the hospital arranges for them, they start repeating the same experience year after year after year.
Mm-hmm.
You do not do that. You are constantly looking for new medicine. You're constantly looking for what's on the horizon, what's coming up, what can I do, what can I change? So not only are you bringing, much better healthcare to your patients, you are creating novelty for yourself.
Right.
So for you, practicing medicine and healthcare isn't going to be boring because it's not the same.
Yeah.
It changes every day, or at least every quarter.
Very much so. And I think that's where innovation is so fascinating, because innovation is you're looking for novelty, you're looking for the shortcuts, and then you're putting on capabilities on top of that shortcut that other people have and using their creativity. And then you can innovate something new in medicine based on what your past novelty or your past experience was, and then that becomes the new novelty. So
Right. How bored would you be if you were still doing the exact same things for your patients the day you left school?
that would be it would be terrifying.
You'd probably quit and go do something else.
Absolutely, yes. And my work gets more fascinating every single day. I love it more and more, and I'm more immersed in the process, but I'm doing something completely differently than I was 20 years ago when I started. So that is interesting. So that's you gave us today, I don't know if you guys caught on to this, but you guys are getting some deep wisdom on the root cause of aging, but also on how to experience time in a whole new way, because really all we have in life is chunks of time. But man, what if you could actually have a little more enjoyable experience with the time that you have? And what if you could extend the time that you have and have more freedom within it? Man, that was fascinating. And
kind of the point, Regan, life extension comes in two ways: adding more years to the calendar, but adding more life to your years.
yeah.
And you do that through novelty. The other thing I'm going to leave people with is, as you get older, so you're younger than me.
Yeah.
And were you 40, 38, 40?
44. Yeah,
44. Okay.
So I'm about 20 years younger.
20 years younger. When you get to be 65, or like Dan Sullivan at 78,
Yeah.
you start to find that all the conversations of your lifetime contemporaries are about retirement.
Yeah.
So all of a sudden, when you plan to be 120, all your contemporaries around you, when you're in your 60s, are no longer contemporaries. What they become is these older relatives and friends that you love, that you cease to relate to on a peer level, and they become more like visiting your grandparents.
Mm.
So these are people you want to spend time with and you love them, but they can't do what you do. And they don't see their future being bigger than their past. So they're talking about, well, we've got this much money saved up, so we're kind of cutting some of these expenses so that, we can make sure our money lasts. And for me, I literally am starting a new corporation today. When this podcast is over, I'm literally starting a new company.
How many companies do you have already? Because we've only talked about one little sliver of what you do. And so
It was like 9 or something.
yeah, it's impressive.
Yeah, the new one I'm starting is actually a clinical research operation.
Yeah. Okay, this is the clinical research.
We're formally starting that today.
Oh, I love it.
And the name of it is actually Bioproof Science.
Bioproof Science. Great.
And we are going to be entering the realm of doing clinical trials. And one of the things we're going to do in that is, because of my kind of unique background, I've got a couple of companies that make, I'm going to say, electrostimulating devices for the brain that affect brain waves,
Mm-hmm.
where you can like increase alpha waves and induce relaxation. I'm going to do some experiments with those devices and layer in hypnotherapy.
Man, perfect.
To see, okay, if we electrically change the brain waves, can we put the person into a deeper Esdale state and create more profound change in their behavior?
Man. And when will you open that up? You know, if we have people who listen to the show, is there a capability for them to get in touch or?
Well, it's easy to find us. If you want to find me, you can go to see the best place. JekyllHydeLabs.com is a quick place to find me. My team is actually building out a Dr. Mark Young website right now that will actually link all the companies together when
Right.
it's done. And I think the URL is going to be Mark Young PhD, I think is the URL. Or they can go to bluntforcetruth.com, which is the big podcast I do with game show host Chuck Woolery. Or you can find me on Twitter, which is @MarkYoungTruth. And by the way, I want to tell people, Regan, I answer every email. So when people send me emails a lot of people send me emails and ask me questions, whether it's about therapy, whether it's about their business, I will answer them all. I don't expect people to pay for all of that. I don't ask people to pay for it. I will tell you that it might sometimes take me a few days to get to those emails, but I always respond to them.
Right. Well, this has been amazing. And so we've posted it in the show notes. You guys can easily find Dr. Mark Young. We've got to have you on again and go through. I want to talk to you about American history too, because you're such a historical wizard. And my grandfather taught government, so I have a lot of knowledge on the American government from a young age. I was taught it, so I'd love to have a conversation on that sometime and go down that
would be
rabbit
amazing.
hole.
And to talk about the aging of the founding fathers and how the founding fathers all lived into their 80s.
Yes,
In a time when the average lifespan was 37.
Right. They more than doubled the lifespan
because they had a purpose.
Yeah.
Building something bigger than themselves.
Yep. Yeah.
There's a great book, I happen to be the co-author on it. Dan Sullivan and I just put a book out called American Happiness. And American Happiness, you can go to Amazon and get it, or you can get it at strategiccoach.com. And I think we're only charging $1 for the book. And it's a small book. You can read it in 45 minutes. And the book is the 8 attributes that one must possess to be a happy American.
Yes.
It's
Well,
all
and
mindsets.
and listen to the American Checklist podcast is amazing. I just wish you guys would do more shows, though. Honestly,
We've been talking about that. We're actually going to change the name of that podcast here shortly to American Happiness.
I love that. That's great. Cool.
And the reason is because we want to have a show that delves into politics, but doesn't delve into angry politics.
Yeah, a lot of politics is blame and finger pointing, and you guys keep it on the principles of the Constitution, which I really appreciate.
So let me share this last thing with you, Regan. I know we're probably running over. I follow a lot of neuroscience research. I read it every day. Great new piece of research just came out using functional MRIs.
Yeah.
And what we're able to discover in functional MRIs is that when you put someone into a political debate, so whether I'm on the left or whether I'm on the right, but when you attack the other person's philosophy, it triggers the reward center in the brain in the same way that winning a slot machine, getting a winning pull on a slot machine would do.
Oh, you've got to be kidding me. No wonder why people get so heated on the topic.
Yes, because they're giving themselves dopamine hits.
I've learned to smell those before they come, and then I steer the conversation the other way.
But these people they're chasing a neurotransmitter hit.
They're addicted. Yes.
Yeah. So I'm going to argue pro-abortion or pro-life, whatever the position is. I'm going to just have an argument with you because if I can spike your belief, I get that hit a neurotransmitter.
I win the lottery right there. Yeah.
So that's what I want people to think about. When we all have different views, we all have diverse views on things. And if you listen to some of my shows, you will find out I am what would be called a libertarian conservative, which means I believe that you and your same-sex partner should be able to own a pot farm and keep machine guns to defend it.
Yeah.
That's how I view the world. So my view is my rights end where your nose begins, and vice versa. So go do whatever you want to do. It's okay if you disagree with me, because who we are politically is 5% of who we are as individuals. But today we're making it about 100% of who we are as individuals. And we need to understand that this is a little piece of who we are. It's okay if you love Biden. It's okay if you dislike Biden, or you love Trump or you hate Trump. That's one tiny little piece of who we are.
Right.
And understand that you're chasing, when you get into those arguments, you're chasing an addiction. You're chasing an addictive behavior that is no different than not being able to leave a slot machine in a casino.
Yep. Yeah. So, for most of us, we need to turn off the news. Apparently, you've got your filters put in so that you don't get that dopamine trigger. And it takes more for you to get it anyway. So
that's true. But I follow something called epistemology. And epistemology, the word itself, folks, means how do you know what you know? So what I have learned is when someone tells me something, the first thing that happens in my brain is, how do they know that? So I want to know how they know that. So if someone on news, whether it's Fox News, CNN, MSNBC, if a commentator says Joe Biden did this, I'm going to ask myself the question, well, how do they know that?
Yeah.
And if it interests me, then I'm going to go do the work to find out what's the root piece of data on that comment, because now I will immediately find out the bias that was spun into the story.
Right. Yeah. It's kind of like first principles thinking.
Yes.
Yeah. Same concept is, you're always questioning and you're saying, okay, well, how do we know that and why? And then you peel it apart from there. Well, this is awesome. And yes, we do need to get another one scheduled, because I'd love to go down this road. But in the meantime, get Mark's book, Hypnotizing. Dr. Mark Young is, once again, really appreciate you having you on. Appreciate all that you're doing, the great work, and keep it up.
Regan, I appreciate you, and I honestly want to tell you, I'm grateful to Dan Sullivan that you and I got to meet, because you're a great addition to my life, and I'm looking forward to knowing you for a long, long time.
I feel the same. I think we're going to have a century-long relationship here. So
exactly, and we'll be back here in 100 years to tell you how this turned out.
Yeah, it's awesome. All right, thanks so much, Mark, and thanks everyone for being on the show. We appreciate you guys, and we'll see you next week. Take care.